morning, everyone. It is 10:30, so we will go ahead and get started. My name is Bryn Obermiller, and I am the Title IV and Family Engagement Director here at TDOE. I have with me today Valerie Starks, who will be running the webinar. I have Melissa Brown, who is our EPlan administrator, and Sarah Smith, who is Director of Project Aware. I, again, just really want to thank you for your time to learn about this new program, Student Support and Academic Enrichment Competitive Grant. One more. So we have a lot to cover, and so we will begin with an overview of the SSAE program, and then we will dive right into the competitive grant. We'll cover funding, the various focus areas of the grant, eligibility for the program, a timeline, awardee expectations, and allowable expenditures. Finally, we will discuss the application process in detail so you will know exactly how to apply and what your next steps should be. If you do have questions throughout the webinar, please type them in the chat box, and we will either address them as they come up, or I will be able to reach out to you directly after the webinar to answer those questions. So before we dig into all of this information, I want to note just a couple of things. Everything that we cover today will also be covered in a very thorough guide to the grant, which will be posted in EPlan in TDOE resources by the end of the day today. In addition, a copy of the slides that we are going to cover is already posted in TDOE resources. Several of the slides that we will go over will contain various links to documents associated with the grant, but I've also included steps on most of the slides to show you how to navigate to those resources. We are recording this webinar, and that recording will also be posted within the next few days, but in the meantime, you will have access to these slides. They're already loaded, as I mentioned. All of the documents and forms that we will discuss today will be located in the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Competitive Grant folder in TDOE resources, so please be sure to check that out. And then just also note that everyone can access TDOE resources in EPlan. You do not have to sign in, so even if you have never been in EPlan before, you will be able to access everything we go over today. These are just instructions for how to go to TDOE resources, and again, everything you need to apply for the grant will be in the Student Support and Academic Enrichment folder, including the grant guide I just mentioned and the actual application template. Okay, so now just a brief overview of the program. President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act into law in December 2015, reauthorizing the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Authorized under Subpart 1 of Title IV, Part A of ESSA is the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant Program. This program provides districts and schools the flexibility to tailor investments based on the needs of their unique student populations. And this is really key when you are thinking about this program. It does allow for a lot of flexibility about how funds are spent, as long as it relates back to the needs of the students, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. The purpose of the SSAE program is to improve students' academic achievement by increasing the capacity of SEAs, LEAs, and local communities to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education, improve school conditions for student learning, and improve the use of technology in order to improve the academic achievement and digital literacy of all students. The SSAE program is one where leveraging other resources will be both necessary and helpful. In order to maximize the use of SSAE resources, districts and schools are encouraged to partner with organizations such as nonprofits, institutions of higher education, museums, and other community agencies to offer programs to students. This is not a requirement of the competitive grant, but it is definitely a plus. So if you are looking to implement some new programming in your schools and you do have some community organizations who have expertise in that area, the SSAE program encourages the development of those partnerships. In addition, district and school leaders should consider how federal, state, and local funds may be leveraged to support a holistic approach to a well-rounded education. This will both put more money into those activities as well as develop programmatic partnerships and relationships which will benefit and reinforce outcomes. So blending these grant funds with other funds you may be using to provide applicable programming is definitely an option, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So now we'll move on to an overview of the competitive grant. So for this grant application, competition, approximately $400,000 will be distributed to districts. And this is different from the Title IV Part A allocation that every district receives each year. That is a formula grant, and nothing about that funding is changing or going away. This competition is an opportunity to receive funding above and beyond that annual allocation. So districts may apply for grant funds on behalf of selected schools, and these funds may be used in Title I and non-Title I schools. Districts may apply for funding ranging from $10,000 to $30,000, and based on the quality of the grant application and the availability of funds, grant proposals may be awarded in full, partially awarded, or not awarded at all. Awards will be made for districts to develop and implement programs and activities that support one of 4 focus areas. So these are the focus areas that will be eligible for funding under this grant. Under the area of well-rounded educational opportunities, the department has deemed 2 areas to be eligible for funding: enrichment and college and career readiness. And we'll talk a little bit more about what both of these things mean in just a minute. We really wanted to narrow the field down when it came to the well-rounded area. It covers so many subjects, and because so much emphasis is already placed on your basic core subjects, we really wanted to provide some opportunity for funding outside of your kind of typical reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. The areas of safe and healthy students and the effective use of technology will remain fairly broad. And again, we'll dig a little bit deeper into what all of this means in just a bit. In order to be eligible to receive grant funding, applicants must have a comprehensive needs assessment completed and posted in EPlans. This will not be a problem for any districts or schools because you all are already required to do this every year as you develop your district and school plans. So there is no separate needs assessment for this grant. And what you already have in EPlan will suffice. Applicants will be required to utilize data and findings from the district and school plan needs assessment to determine appropriate programming and complete the narrative questions within the grant application. Applications that do not show a clear link between proposed programming and the needs identified in the district or school plan needs assessment will not be considered for funding. So the needs assessment portion of the grant is going to be very crucial, and we'll break that down in just a moment. So this is the timeline for the grant. The application will open in EPlan on November 1st, and all proposals must be submitted by December 21st by midnight Central Time. All applicants will be notified of their application status on or before February 1st, and our goal is to have grant funds available to districts by February 15th. These funds will be good for about 17 months and will expire in June of 2020. So on to the project activities. An awarded district shall use funds provided under this part to engage in activities to support a well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, and the effective use of technology. And as I mentioned, the department has deemed 4 focus areas to be eligible for funding, which you see up on the screen. Allowable uses for funds under each of these categories may include, but are not limited to, direct services for students, professional development for teachers and administrators, and supplemental educational resources and equipment. And so now we will break down each of the different focus areas for the grant. So starting with well-rounded educational opportunities, this is the first purpose of the SSAE program, and is really intended to provide enriched curriculum and educational experiences. A well-rounded education helps students make important connections among their studies, their curiosities, their passions, and the skills that they need to become critical thinkers and productive members of society and it also promotes a diverse set of learning experiences that engage across a variety course of activities and programs. And I think we can all agree that when students are engaged in what's going on in school, their achievement naturally gets stronger. So for the purposes of this grant, 2 focus areas within well-rounded educational opportunities will be eligible for funding, and those are enrichment and college and career readiness. Under enrichment, grant proposals could include programming to improve access to foreign language instruction, arts, music education, and physical education, to use music and the arts for constructive student engagement, problem solving, conflict resolution, or to support the integration of subjects such as combining arts and mathematics. Please note that this is by no means an exhaustive list of allowable activities. We strongly encourage districts and schools to think outside of the box and be creative and innovative as you design programming around your selected focus areas. So if you have a great idea for an enrichment activity that isn't up on the screen, by all means, write it up and submit a proposal. Under college and career readiness, we have activities like supporting college and career counseling, including providing students with access to career advisement and exploration programs, promoting access to accelerated learning opportunities, including AP and IB programs, dual or concurrent enrollment programs, early college high schools, and TDOE promoted industry certifications. Also implementing work-based learning programs, including youth apprenticeship programs, or implementing a K-12 work-based learning program aimed to promote career awareness and exploration beginning in the early years. And again, just like in the enrichment area, this is not an exhaustive list. If you have some programming in mind that gets students ready for college and career and really nurtures a ready graduate culture within your district or schools, we would love to see that proposal. And so now we will move on to safe and healthy students. The next purpose of the SSAE program is to improve school conditions for student learning. And I think we all can agree that when students are healthy and feel safe and supportive, they are far more likely to succeed in school. So as it relates to the safe and healthy student area, proposals can focus on any of the topics that you see on the screen, including promoting community and family engagement, providing comprehensive school-based mental health services, promoting supportive school discipline, suicide and dropout prevention, culturally responsive teaching, trauma-informed classrooms, re-entry programs and transition services, implementing programs that support a healthy, active lifestyle, preventing bullying and harassment, relationship building skills, mentoring and school counseling, school-wide positive behavioral interventions, and drug and violence prevention. Again, not an exhaustive list, and if you have programming that you believe would improve school conditions for student learning, we encourage you to apply. I am very excited to provide you with some additional information about an opportunity for some additional funding that will be available under the Safe and Healthy Students area. Districts applying for funding focused on comprehensive school-based mental health services may be eligible for additional funding opportunities in subsequent years. This additional funding would be separate and not part of this particular grant, and it would be managed by the Division of Special Populations and Student Support. If you are interested in applying for funding in this area, an additional reference document will be posted in TDOE resources by the time the application window opens on November 1st. We are very fortunate to have with us this morning Sarah Smith, who is Director of Project Aware, and Ms. Pat Connor, and tell me your division again?
Student Support.
Student Support, yes, Executive Director of Student Support. And they will share a little bit more about this opportunity, so I will pass it over to you all.
Great. Well, I'm very excited about this new opportunity for school districts to benefit from the work of Tennessee Aware, where we're now expanding technical assistance and capacity building to all school districts in the state. In order to the components of the Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health Services Title IV grant include the following. The plan should follow the format of using a multi-tiered systems of support framework. And these particular grant funds will support beginning the work in the Tier 1 or Tier 2 levels, prevention or early intervention levels. The grant could be applied for either Tier 1 or Tier 2, or to include both Tier 1 and Tier 2, depending on what your current level of implementation is locally. I'd like to explain some specifically examples of Tier 1 activities. Well, that would include needs assessment, team building, creating an implementation plan, conducting the school climate survey, which is a survey for students, parents, and teachers, conducting mental health literacy awareness trainings, looking at your local policy development, providing mental health wellness and resiliency education to students, establishing an early identification and referral process, and conducting in partnership with students anti-stigma awareness campaigns. The type of Tier 2 activities would include developing a student mental health referral pathway system, supporting evidence-based small group interventions and individual and small group counseling activities. Optional type of training activities include the ACEs and trauma-informed practices, restorative practices, and the social and personal competence trainings, all of which are provided for free currently through the department. We know that future grant funds will address Tier 3 strategies. An example of those Tier 3 strategies include providing school-based therapy services for students, being real clear on the transition planning and implementation for various students, and providing wraparound services as needed when students are being served by multi-child serving agencies. The type of allowable expenditures under these grant funds, the funds could be used for a part-time salary for a grant coordinator, youth mental health first aid manuals, which is the adult mental health literacy course, Tier 2 curriculum, behavioral health screening tools, mental health awareness materials, and travel to attend state trainings and conferences. I'm very excited to announce that the Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health webpage has just been uploaded, and you can click on this and gain access to the comprehensive resource guide there that goes into much greater detail about what I've just described to you quickly. In terms of thinking about whether or not to apply for this grant, I highly encourage you to bring together your coordinated school health director, if you have a school psychologist, your school counselors, school social workers, and even your school nurses. These are really the frontline people that can give you a sense of the level of needs of your students in regards to school mental health.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sarah. And again, the reference document that I mentioned earlier pertaining to this strand of programming will be available in the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Competitive Grant folder in TDOE Resources on November 1st. So be sure to check out that if you're interested. Can you go back to that slide just 1 second? And I also just want to be pretty clear that what we've discussed with Sarah and Pat is that this grant application would really be covering those Tier 1 and Tier 2 initiatives, and then that additional funding that we spoke about that could be available in subsequent years would be able to address those Tier 3.
Right. And that funding is up to $100,000.
And that funding for those Tier 3 that could occur in future years could be up to $100,000 worth of funding. So definitely something to be excited about.
And it's a prerequisite to have done this initial grant to be eligible for the subsequent grant.
Right. So you would need to get this SSAE grant and then the divisions of special POPs and student support would work with you to begin coming up with a plan for that subsequent funding. Right? Got it right? All right, perfect. All right, so moving on, the final purpose of the SSAE program is to improve the use of technology and thus improve the academic achievement and digital literacy of all students. When carefully designed and thoughtfully applied, technology can accelerate, amplify, and expand the impact of effective practices that support student learning, increase community engagement, foster safe and healthy environments, and enable well-rounded educational opportunities. So it's really about having the right technology in place while also empowering teachers and students to use that technology effective. So within this area, districts and schools are encouraged to design programming that helps to support high-quality professional development for educators, school leaders, and administrators to personalize learning and improve academic achievement, provide students in rural, remote, and underserved areas with the resources to benefit from high-quality digital learning opportunities, deliver specialized or rigorous academic courses and curriculum using technology, including digital learning technologies and assistive technology, and design and implement innovative blended learning and or personalized learning initiatives. And again, just like the previous areas, this is by no means an exhaustive list. We encourage you to be creative as you design programming within this area. So I think a lot of people hear the term technology and instantly think, great, now I can use these funds for my school's one-to-one initiative and get all of my students a laptop. And while we completely understand that this is very important to be able to get devices and programming into the hands of students, that is not the intent of this focus area as it was written into the law. And that all makes sense when you think about the name of the area. It's called the effective use of technology. So it's not about buying stuff, it's about making sure that teachers and students are using the stuff that they have effectively and in a way that is going to move the needle when it comes to academic achievement. Let's face it, you can have all the computers and programming in the world, but if your teachers don't know how to use it and how to integrate it effectively into their teaching on a daily basis, it's not going to make much of a difference. So there is a special rule within the law that states that no more than 15% of funds in this content area may be spent on technology infrastructure, which includes devices, equipment, software applications, platforms, digital instructional resources, and or other one-time IT purchases. And that at least 85% of the funds in this area must be used to support professional learning to enable the effective use of educational technology. So if you are considering submitting a proposal within this area, please be sure you pay very close attention to this role. If while you are preparing your proposal and you have any questions about what or might not be considered to be technology infrastructure, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I do not want anyone to spend a lot of time writing up a proposal that may be disqualified because that 15% cap is exceeded. So again, please reach out if you have questions. So now we'll move on to awardee expectations. Every district who submits a proposal will need to designate one project director to ensure that all grant programming is well managed, implemented in a timely manner, and that all associated grant monitoring reports are submitted complete and on time. Ideally, your project director should already be an established EPlan user and have a working knowledge of the platform. This is by no means a requirement, but I think it will save you a lot of time and effort in the long run. Regardless of whether or not your project director is already an established EPlan user, he or she will need to complete an EPlan user access form. You will see directions for how to navigate to that form up on the screen right now. The project director will simply print the form, check the box next to student support and academic enrichment director, gather the required signatures, and follow the directions on the form to submit. And again, this must happen before you will be able to gain access to the application in EPlan. Okay, so as far as monitoring and reporting goes, Each grantee will be responsible for completing and submitting a minimum of one monitoring report focused on the grant. And more details about the monitoring expectations and a timeline will be shared once grant funds are awarded. Grantees may also participate in on-site monitoring visits and additional monitoring reports as deemed appropriate by the department. So if we see some promising practices going on in your district, we may want to pay you a visit and see firsthand how that programming is working. And on the other hand, if we see that your district is really struggling to implement your programming as it was proposed and approved, you may be asked to submit some additional reports and be provided with some additional technical assistance. Again, clear monitoring guidelines will be shared once awards are made. Okay, so next we'll cover allowable expenditures. So funds awarded through this grant must be spent exclusively on costs associated with meeting the stated purposes of SSAE and the approved grant proposal. The total administrative costs, excluding indirect costs, may not exceed 2% of the total allocation, and administrative costs may include a project director or other individuals who will support and oversee the program. SSAE funds must be used to provide additional services, programs, or materials that are not provided with state or local resources absent of federal funds. In other words, these grant funds cannot pay for resources that would otherwise be purchased with state and or local funds. So as I mentioned before, examples of allowable expenditures include, but are not limited to, professional development, supplemental resources and equipment, and leveraging resources of other federal and state funds to support a holistic approach to a well-rounded, safe, and healthy education. A district may not use grant funds to supplant funds that would otherwise come from state or local programs, which we just discussed. You may not use those funds to acquire property, rent space, or make building or infrastructure improvements. Okay, so on to the good stuff. So next we'll break down the application process. This grant will be housed in EPlans, and while the official application will not open until November 1st, I thought it was very important for districts to be able to view the application template before that window opens. So a copy of the application template will be available in TDOE resources by the end of the day today. This will be the official application. It is a paper application, so you are welcome to begin working on it right away, but just know that you will not be able to upload your final application in EPlan until November 1st. And then also, once the application finally opens in EPlan, you will also be able to find that template in the related documents section of the grant in EPlan. So because EPlan is not always the easiest thing to use, especially if you're a first-timer, step-by-step instructions on how to submit your application in EPlan can be found in TDOE resources. This page is actually already posted, and it is titled EPlan Instructions. It will explain everything that you need to know as far as how to submit your application and also instructions to complete the user access form that we just discussed. All elements of the application must be completed and submitted in EPlan by midnight Central Time on December 21st, 2018. So the application, which again, it will be a paper application, will contain 10 sections, which we will now break down. Go ahead. So section 1 is the district contact and grant information page. On this page, you will enter information like the district's ID and name, the contact information for the project director, the district poverty rate, the focus area of the proposal, and the amount of funding being requested. Section 2 is a list of schools to be served with the funding, and then section 3 is a list of external partners that will be utilized during the grant. So those first 3 sections are pretty simple and straightforward. So section 4 is one of the most important sections, and it is the needs assessment narrative. In this information, in this section, you will use information from your most recent district and school needs assessment to identify 3 things. Number 1 is how the focus area was determined. Number 2 is what data was analyzed to determine these needs. And number 3 is how the proposed use of funds relates to the needs of the district, the schools being served, their educators, and students. So in this section, we are going to be looking for some really strong connections between your established needs and your proposed programming. If in reading the application we do not see that clear connection, funding will most likely not be awarded. So your needs assessment needs to be based on solid data and should be inclusive of all the schools and populations that you will be serving under the grant. So if your district is applying for funding for 3 of its schools, all 3 of those schools and their impacted populations should be addressed within this narrative. Section 5. Oops, sorry, can you go back one more? Thank you. Section 5 is the program goals and evaluation narrative, and this is another really important section. In this section, we will ask that applicants create at least 1 SMART goal for the project. You're welcome to create more than 1. And then also provide information about how and when those goals will be measured. I think it can go without saying that ongoing evaluation is critical to determine a program's effectiveness. We want these funds to have a direct and strong impact on schools, teachers, and students, so having a really solid evaluation plan is going to be crucial. It is highly recommended that your evaluation plan includes some way of looking at the effectiveness of your programming throughout the implementation of the project. So in other words, we do not want you to wait until the end of the grant to evaluate your programming. You will want to make sure that you are doing frequent and ongoing evaluation. That way, if you get a quarter or halfway through your project and you realize that it's not having the impact that you intended, you can make some changes midstream. So again, this section, we're really going to be looking for some strong plans to include those frequent evaluations. Section 6 will include your activity descriptions. Applicants may select up to 3 activities to address their chosen focus area, and for each activity that you describe, you will identify a detailed description of the activity to be carried out and how the activity will address the results of the needs assessment and help achieve project goals. You will also include a detailed timeline for the activity, a description of the people responsible for activity implementation, and an estimated total budget for the activity. You're going to want to be pretty detailed in these descriptions. Reviewers should be able to read these descriptions and get a very clear picture of what will be happening, when it will be happening, and who will be responsible for implementing each step of the project. So this is how the activity description table will look within the application. So let's say, for example, that your district is going to focus on college and career readiness. The district will select up to 3 activities to address this focus area. So let's say they decide to select career exploration in the early grades as their first activity, career fairs for middle schools in the second activity, and improved career counseling in high schools for the third activity. For each of those 3 activities, they would complete the table you see on the screen. Each activity will have its own table within the application, so you will only fill out as many tables as you have proposed activities. If you have 1 proposed activity, you will complete the table for activity 1 only. And if you have 2 proposed activities, you will fill out the tables for activity 1 and activity 2, and so on. The next section is the section 7, which is the proposed budget. The budget table should reflect the estimated expenditures that will be paid with grant funds over the period of the grant. All budget expenditures must align with the needs and activities identified in the previous sections of the application. So if we see something in the budget that isn't mentioned in your activity descriptions, that's going to be a red flag for us. So definitely be sure that your budget includes estimated costs for everything that is involved in your proposed activities. If funds are awarded to your district, a more detailed and comprehensive budget will be submitted in EPlans once those funds are awarded. And please note that those final budgets will have to be approved by the department before any spending can occur or any reimbursement request can be submitted. Okay. This is what the budget table will look like within the application, and so you will notice 2 sections, an income section and an expenses section. At the top, in the income section, you will first enter the amount that you are requesting from the grant, and then you will also have the opportunity to enter any other funds that might be contributing to this project. So we talked a little bit about leveraging funds from other sources earlier, but let's say that your focus area is enrichment and that you have a local business who has donated funding to help purchase some additional supplies for this program. In addition, let's say that your district uses a portion of its Title IV Part A allocation to fund some additional resources for this program. You would list that additional funding here. There is no requirement that you have any additional funding, so it will absolutely not affect your application negatively if nothing is listed. But if you are leveraging funds from other sources to contribute to this project, it's definitely helpful for us to know. The next section is the expenses section, and you will simply list your estimated expenses and total it up at the bottom. You will also have the opportunity to include some additional context about each expense in the narrative description column. Okay, so section 8 is the sustainability narrative, and in this section you will describe your plan for keeping the project going after the funding is complete. So you will answer the question you see at the top, will this activity be continued after the grant is complete? And then you will describe any resources that will be allocated to support continuation or how progress will be continued without the activity. Please note that a lack of financial sustainability is not a reason for us not to award you funding. But showing that you do have a solid plan in place to continue your progress once the grant money is gone is going to be really, really important. Section 9 is the assurances page. This is just a list of guarantees that you and your district agree to follow should funding be awarded. This page of the application will need to be printed and signed by two people, the project director for the grant and the director of schools or an appropriate designee. Once you gather the signatures, you will scan the page, save it, and upload it to EPlan along with your completed application. The last section of the application is optional, and it is the supporting attachment section. Supporting documents could include charts, bulleted lists, or other graphical elements to support your proposal, including letters of support from external partners. All supporting documents should be uploaded in PDF form, and again, there are step-by-step instructions available for you in TDOE resources that will help you walk through the process of submitting your application and any other documents. And again, that document is already posted in that folder. So once submitted, all applications will be reviewed by a panel of department staff from various divisions. The rubric that will be used to review applications is available. It's already posted and can be found in TDOE resources, so definitely that's very helpful for you to check out. You will be able to see exactly what our reviewers will be rating each application on. And again, applicants will be notified of the status of their application by February 1st, 2019. So that's it. That was a very quick rundown of the grant. I know we just covered a ton of information, and you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed about the process, but please rest assured that everything you need to apply for the grant will be posted in TDOE resources by the end of the day today. This is going to include the guide to the grant, which will cover everything we went over and more. It will include the grant application templates, which you can begin working on right away, the EPlan instruction form, the evaluation rubric, and the slides we just went over. Remember that the reference document focused on comprehensive school-based mental health services will also be posted to TDOE resources by November 1, and we already have a spot reserved in that folder for that document. But I do strongly encourage you to go ahead in the meantime and check out the website that Sarah mentioned that covers comprehensive school-based mental health services. That could give you a fairly good head start there. So if you do have questions about the grant, please contact me, Bryn Obermiller. For questions about comprehensive school-based mental health services, please contact Sarah Smith. And then for EPlan issues, please contact Melissa Brown. Looks like we have a couple questions up here, so let me look through these. So the first question is, will the presentation be shared with webinar participants. So yes, a copy of the slides are already located in TDOE resources within the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Competitive Grant folder, so that's already loaded there. Another question was, can schools apply individually and can only districts apply? So districts will apply for this grant on behalf of schools. We do not have a limit as far as how many proposals you can submit, but just please be aware that if you do apply for multiple, if you submit multiple applications, we only have so much funding to go around, and so there is by no means a guarantee that all of those proposals will be awarded. And then, yes, somebody asked, will a recording of this webinar be available? Yes, we are recording it. It does take a couple days for us to get the closed captioning straight, but I do hope to have this actual archived webinar with all the audio uploaded to TDOE resources early next week. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. So I encourage you to reach out to me about any questions that you have. I'm happy to assist. Okay, let's see. Is there a minimum or max amount awarded? Yes. Districts will be able to apply for funding ranging from $10,000 to $30,000. And that's per individual application. So if you decide to submit a couple applications, then that application could also be a range of $10,000 to $30,000. All of this information will be pretty clear. It's in the slides, but then it also will be included in the guide to the grant as well. And then just remember that those of you who are going to be applying for comprehensive school-based mental health services may have the opportunity to receive up to an additional $100,000 in subsequent years. So just definitely keep that in mind. Again, more information about that will be coming out very shortly, but I encourage you, if you do have questions in the meantime, to reach out to sarah.smith@tn.gov. Again, I will be back at my desk in just a few minutes, so please feel free to shoot me an email with anything that you're not sure about. I really thank you for your time today. I hope everyone listening will apply, and we are looking forward to reviewing your applications. Anybody else have anything to add for the good of the cause?
Just hope you have a great day.
Yes, have a great day and enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much.